So our next video is just called Why You Don't Get Monster Hunter World. I have no idea what this is about, but the title just intrigued me, so I do want to take a look at it. So let's dive in.
When I played Monster Hunter World in 2018, I didn't enjoy it very much, which is strange
Crazy.
considering I loved every Monster Hunter game both before and after World.
Okay, I was gonna say, I know a lot of people experienced that with Sunbreak. They just couldn't get themselves into it. They didn't enjoy it, but then later down the line, they picked it up again, and they had a good time.
I used to think this was a mediocre stain on an otherwise phenomenal series. However, I now see it as a truly one-of-a-kind experience that offers something so special that it almost feels worth waiting nearly 7 years to finally understand. So I want to tell you my story in hopes that maybe, if you relate to it,
They're using the best weapon in the game. I don't make the rules. It just is what it is.
you'll be able to change your perception of this game like I was. So I first played Monster Hunter in 2013, which was, tragically,
Can we just say that transition was amazing? They're jumping. They're showing you physically that they're jumping from 2018 back down to 2013. That was really good. Really good.
Years ago. A friend of mine introduced me to the series, and she said it was this game where you fight these massive bosses to make armor and weapons out of them, and that you could even play multiplayer. I thought that sounded pretty cool, so I got the demo, tried it out, and it was a bit tough to get a hold of. Up to this point,
Yeah, I remember my first time playing. It was Monster Hunter Tri. There's no rules to anything. They don't tell you how to play the game. There's no good guidance or anything like that. It's just confusing, but I just kind of played it and enjoyed it. But again, I was like mega confused.
in my life, I was used to games like Tales of the Abyss, Legend of Zelda, and Kingdom Hearts. Games where, if you press a button, you get an immediate response. There wasn't too much commitment, and the games were pretty snappy, and perhaps most importantly, easy to understand.
Yep.
In Zelda, you play as Link. He has a sword. You press A or B to swing it, and it kills things. That's it. Anything that doesn't die to the sword is probably weak to a specific item.
Yep, just like I said, Monster Hunter, they don't tell you any of this. You just kind of figure it out in the beginning.
Recently obtained. All in all, you don't exactly need a half-hour-long tutorial to understand the fundamentals of your weapon. It's about as simple and straightforward as...
I mean, I think that's just the charged blade alone, right? Most complex weapon in the game. You probably need like an hour video to just understand how to barely use the weapon.
Pressing the subscribe button. Now sure, there was plenty of depth in games like Tales, but that depth didn't feel so essential to the experience that if you didn't understand it, you'd suffer. Monster Hunter was a totally different beast. The only weapon I could even begin to get a hold of were the dual blades. You know, the fastest weapon in the game? Funny enough though, it's not like I didn't enjoy it. Quite the opposite in fact. Regardless, I decided against buying the full game. I never gave it much thought, and I couldn't remember exactly why until I started working on the
there's Try.
release dates, at which point I knew exactly what happened. Let's just say I got distracted. Anyway, fast forward a few years and a new Monster Hunter game was announced, 4 Ultimate. It had a demo too, I played it, absolutely loved it, and was then hooked on this game for years. Generations would later release, and it was yet another home run for Capcom. Monster Hunter was rapidly becoming my favorite game series of all time, quickly amassing over 1,000 collective hours in just a few short years.
It happens to us all.
I even went back and played a bit of the games that I missed, like Freedom Unite. I adored the...
That's something that I haven't done, but that is something that I would like to do at some point.
Weapon designs that made it seem like you were literally carrying a part of the monster you just defeated with you, and the excitement that builds after you beat a monster and rush to the smithy to see what you can make out of it. I was in awe of this seemingly...
Honestly, that's like one of my favorite things to do. I mean, in Monster Hunter World, and Rise, and I'm going to do the same thing in Wilds. As soon as you finish them, you're going to see what kind of armor they have, you're going to see what weapons they have, and of course how they look. And most importantly, you're going to see what skills they have.
Endless content with collaborations that included everything from classic anime like Yu-Gi-Oh! To fighting games like Street Fighter. And of course, I was thoroughly and utterly amazed by the monsters this series was based on. Their colors, their attacks, their one-of-a-kind set pieces. It was truly incredible, and I loved every second of it. So naturally, when World was announced, saying I was excited would be the understatement of the century. However, this time things were a bit different. There was a lot that I didn't like about Monster Hunter World.
I mean, Monster Hunter World just completely turned into a whole different game. Like the separation from Generations to Monster Hunter World is gigantic. literally everything has changed. The way you move, the way you hunt, the way the monsters move, hell, the way you drink potions, the way you have infinite mining, your mining tool or pickaxes, fishing rods, nets, the map there, the monsters on the map, just literally everything is different.
Some of these problems were surface level, but some were so fundamental that I worried I would never be able to enjoy this game. Let's start with that first category. I don't really need to tell you about the weapon designs and world. While this is subjective and I'm certainly not an artist, I can say that those vibrant and exciting weapon designs of the past were gone, replaced by these boring slap-on weapons as they've been so eloquently dubbed.
I mean, Raging Bracky, that weapon's pretty fantastic.
By the community. I know this seems like a minor nitpick, but I really felt like a kid on Christmas morning when I would run to the smithy after beating a monster. These designs were just so cool, and I was always excited to see what the next one would look like and how they'd adapt to the monster's personality.
I mean, I can see what they're saying though.
For example, is defined by two things: its incredibly sharp knife-like scales
yep.
and its overwhelming speed. This monster is like a living weapon. This idea presents itself in these weapons that look exceptionally sleek. Even the way the light bounces off of them is different from other weapons.
Yeah, I could see it. I can see it.
The Ceregios did, a blade so sharp it could sever the sky itself. That's just such a fascinating concept. This, on the other hand, does not elicit that same feeling. That excitement was totally gone from World, but it wasn't the be-all end-all. Sure, it'd hamper my enjoyment of the game a bit, however, this was still Monster Hunter. At its core, it was still the same simple experience. You choose a quest, fight a monster.
I mean, the other weapons are so much cooler. Like the in-game weapons.
That's new. While I liked Turf Wars the first time I saw them, this whole monster constantly interrupting hunts thing got old pretty fast. This, along with the sheer size of the maps, really started to bother me.
Okay. Yeah, the size of the maps, I enjoy them because, I don't know, it's like you're immersed in the area, but I do get lost, even still now, with as many hours as I have in the game. I still get lost in the ancient forest.
I wanted to fight a Rathalos, not chase it around an enormous forest while shooing away an angry squirrel from time to time.
Understandable.
This overwhelming size and general inconvenience were the investigation sections. These were sections where you had to run around finding tracks of a monster before eventually unlocking them. While you could do this in the background, it was not optional. I would have much rather just completed certain quests like old games and fought new monsters after unlocking them. You could do something close to this by just running through a bunch of quests while collecting tracks as you did, but there was no guarantee on how long this would take since it was mostly RNG. It wasn't just the investigations though. Tracking became a very prevalent part of this game. This made a lot of sense considering that's what hunters do. It fits, but I just wasn't a fan of it. I'd rather fight the monster than play Blue's Clues. The next change that really bothered me was the
That's really funny.
artificial scarcity of special quests. Xeno'jiiva and Zora Magdaros are perfect examples of this. I distinctly remember the first time I beat Zora and saw its weapons and armor. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the charge blade, since up to this point
it's fantastic.
Bone or iron, but this was a monster hunter weapon.
It is glorious.
The Zora hunt wasn't perfect, however I did enjoy the spectacle, and more than anything I was just excited to use.
I mean, the Zora Magdaros hunt is it is quite boring. That's the next thing I'm doing whenever I'm playing today, actually.
Weapon
I think it's the first encounter.
The same as the ones I had been using for the past 50 hours. I quickly sprinted to the quest board to start farming, and it wasn't there. I thought I was just losing my mind since I was pretty sure I fought the monster. I didn't think I imagined it. I then did a quick Google search and found that it's actually on a random cycle. At this point, I was a mixture of profoundly disappointed and baffled at this choice, yet somehow I was able to convince myself that this too didn't matter. Okay, so I can't get cool looking weapons. I have to chase monsters from New York to LA just to fight them before even getting the
oh my lord.
chance to do that. I have to run around the map playing Blue's Clues, and quests are limited for no conceivable reason. Despite all of that, it was still Monster Hunter. I would still enjoy it, right? Would I? This is that fundamental problem that I was getting at earlier. There's a clear and distinct vision of what this game is trying to be. This can be seen in the investigation sections of the game, where you're asked to gradually progress a bar while searching for the monster's tracks before finally unlocking them.
It is tedious, I'll give you that.
Quests like Zora or Xeno'jiiva. This limited availability makes them feel more like events rather than simple monsters that you can just summon and fight at whim. And of course, it's all over the hunts and general environments of this game. It's this lack of control that defines Monster Hunter World. And unfortunately, unfortunately for me, I really didn't like that. So I beat Xeno'jiiva, and shortly after, with the release of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, I was done. I didn't plan on going back. GU was exactly what I missed from old Monster Hunter, and I was totally okay with staying there. 2.5 years went by, absolutely nothing eventful happening in between, when suddenly a Nintendo Direct revealed what would become my favorite game of all time. After sinking an unhealthy amount of hours into Rise,
I will say Monster Hunter Rise is absolutely fantastic.
I realized that no, modern Monster Hunter wasn't the problem. It was World. I just didn't like it. And you know what?
This is so crazy because you normally hear the opposite. So this take is just, this is really wild.
I could accept that. If I didn't like one game in a series of over a dozen, that was fine, and I was content letting it stay that way. But after I randomly uploaded a stupid video on Dark Souls that got way more views than I could have ever imagined, people decided to stick around, and I decided to keep making these. Eventually, I felt like I had to go back. I had to give World another shot. I mean, it's literally in my name. I would be lying if I said this was as easy as launching Monster Hunter World and just falling in love right off the bat. Iceborne has a lot of the same problems for me that World did. Still ugly weapons that admittedly got a bit better, still limited quests that you couldn't repeat unless the game decided you were allowed to, and still no pause button? Seriously, this one is insane. Even the guiding lands, while cool.
Yeah, the pause button is kind of, yeah.
Amplified some of my biggest problems. You see, the grinding lands are almost entirely random until you unlock the monsters through the lore system. This means that you'll often be forced to just reset over and over until one day you find the monster you're looking for. Naturally, the guiding lands were perhaps even less predictable than the base game was, since now monsters that weren't even on the map before could suddenly spawn in. However, this time things were different. It wasn't just the YouTube thing and the obligation I felt to play through this game, granted that was a lot of it, but more importantly, my mindset was different. The biggest mistake that I made when I initially played World was that I was trying to get the exact same experience I got out of older games. I didn't want to use the clutch claw because I thought it was just a bit too clunky, and
yeah, and that's what a lot of people did with Monster Hunter Rise as well. They're so focused on Monster Hunter World and they're expecting it to kind of play and be like Monster Hunter World, and when it wasn't, they were not happy about it, so they just stopped playing it.
I saw it as an overly risky and inconsistent option. While I am still certainly the Clutch Claw's biggest hater, instead of vomiting at the thought of using it, I really tried to take advantage of it this time. In doing so, I was able to experience these truly exciting moments. Slamming monsters into walls, latching onto them when they tried to run, and... oh, Rocksteady wore off. Like I said, still its biggest hater. Anyway, even on a fundamental level, I just wanted to enter a hunt, fight a monster, do it again, and repeat until the sun burns out. That wasn't going to work here, so I instead tried to accept the idea that I have no say in what's going on in this world, and actively embrace that chaos. Sure,
enjoy
it's annoying that I can't jump straight into another Yangaruga hunt, but that's not the only monster I need to hunt. I can go out into the grinding lands and just hunt non-stop for an hour.
I love how he's calling it the grinding lands.
From plenty of different monsters. Just running out there and mindlessly hunting was actually surprisingly fun, and these massive hauls you get for doing so always felt great. It also really helps that Capcom released an update that permanently unlocks all of the event quests. You know, the way it should have been from the start. Sorry, I'm hating again. You did still have to
That is true. I will give you that 100%.
Unlock monsters in the grinding lands for augments though, and that was still mostly RNG. There's no real getting around that fact. However, Monster Hunter is not, nor has it ever been, a quick game about sprinting to the end. In Rise Break you had to grind anomalies, in GU you had to grind hypers and deviants, and for you it was apexes. We could keep going, but I think you get the idea. The critical difference here is how those hundreds of hours manifest themselves in World and Iceborne. In previous games they'd come from hunting the same monsters over and over in these static and controlled environments, but here they come from these fluid, chaotic, and perhaps most accurately, natural environments that are never quite the same. They come from running out to hunt a Banbaro only for a Zenogre to suddenly show up out of nowhere. They come
destroy both of you.
Where you fight 3 monsters in a row only for an Elder Dragon to appear, and instead of rolling your eyes and thinking, here we go again, you grab your weapon, lock in, and show
and you go
the
for it.
Of the guiding lands really is. Outside of the guiding lands, they come from these masterful elders like Shara, who perfectly encapsulate this game's mechanics while providing a one-of-a-kind spectacle that somehow immediately topped not just
very amazing hunt,
but 3 times in a row with the next 3 elders. They come from this one-of-a-kind experience that's so clearly and distinctly different from what previous games were and what Rise Break is. It's in accepting that difference and embracing it instead of fighting against it that my eyes were finally opened and I was able to see what everyone else has for years. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend
and you can actually enjoy it
all time. It's not. I still have my problems with it, but I see it in a new light now. I get why people love this game, and I can honestly finally say that I do too. But what's the best Monster Hunter game? Well, it might not be what you think. Check out this video on that.
And we definitely will.
Adventures log, day 13.
We definitely will. So we're going to give this video a like, and we're going to sub to this channel. This channel will be in the description. It'll be pinned at the top. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. It was an incredible video. I feel like a lot of people who play Monster Hunter Rise can relate to this, probably. Like the people who played it in the beginning, didn't like it, played it a year later, and absolutely enjoyed it. And I feel like he just captured that so well.